Have you ever cast a vote for a political movement that promised to sweep away decades of established corruption and violence, only to watch them build an entirely new system of control? When the Morena party originally took power in Mexico, they promised the citizens a historic transformation. They campaigned on the idea that they would finally put the working class poor first and end the long era of untouchable elite politicians. They promised to protect the natural environment, stop the violence of the drug cartels, and build world-class infrastructure without stealing a single public peso. But today we are going to look behind the daily press conferences and examine the actual accounting books. We are going to break down the real human and financial costs of their governance models, from multi-billion-dollar train lines that derail in the jungle to deadly refinery fires, and a security strategy that handed local economies directly to criminal organizations. We will explore how a movement built on transparency shifted control of the country to the military and engineered a system of dependency. Welcome back to Money's Hidden Past, where we look past the political slogans and figure out how the global economy really works in our everyday lives. Today, we are looking closely at Mexico and the political and economic reality of Morena. We will explore the math behind their flagship megaprojects, the truth about their cartel strategy, and how they dismantle public institutions to maintain power. But before we jump into this complex history together, please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a comment down below and let me know if you think direct cash handouts cure poverty, or if they simply buy votes. Your support helps this video reach more hardworking people who want to understand the mechanics of the economy. Let us start by looking at what happens to the people who try to ask hard questions and demand transparency. Morena built its brand on the idea of shining a light on corruption. But the reality for journalists working on the ground is incredibly dangerous under President Claudia Sheinbaum, who officially took office in October 2024. The crisis of violence against media workers has continued to claim lives. From the start of her administration through July 2026, press freedom organizations documented the murders of at least 19 journalists. But this violence does not simply happen in a vacuum. It is actively fueled by a strategy of state-sponsored stigmatization. Every morning, the government holds daily presidential press briefings known as the Mañaneras. Instead of using this time to outline policy, the administration routinely uses the national broadcast to systematically attack critical reporters and independent human rights organizations. This rhetoric creates a highly hostile environment that signals to corrupt local officials and criminal groups that the press is an official enemy of the state. When you combine that hostility with a justice system where the impunity rate for crimes against the press exceeds 90%, reporters are left entirely unprotected. They are silenced so the government can control the economic narrative without facing audits or investigations from the civil society. And controlling the narrative is vital when you open the ledger and look at the actual accounting for the administration's megaprojects. The government promised to build massive infrastructure that would bring wealth to the southern states, but they bypassed standard financial planning to rush the construction for political deadlines. Take the refineria Dos Bocas. For example, building an oil refinery is one of the most complex engineering tasks on Earth. Standard engineering requires a methodology called front-end loading, which ensures you calculate the exact costs and secure the blueprints before you lay the concrete. The board of directors at the state oil company Pemex threw this methodology out the window. The government originally budgeted exactly $8 billion for the refinery, but because they started building without a finished plan, the costs quickly spiraled out of control. Independent audits conducted by the superior auditor of the Federation have revealed millions of pesos in damages to the public treasury. They documented excess payments given to contractors and a total lack of financial supervision. But the true cost of rushing heavy industry is paid in human lives. The hidden structural vices of the construction led to severe industrial accidents. On March 16, 2026, a fire and explosion at the refinery resulted in the tragic deaths of 5 working-class laborers. Less than a month later in April, another fire broke out, forcing emergency crews to battle the flames. The government prioritized optical speed to claim a political victory, and the workers paid the ultimate price for the lack of safety protocols. The story follows the exact same pattern when you look at the Tren. The government handed control of this massive railway project directly over to the military and private consortiums, removing civilian oversight. The superior auditor of the Federation flagged the project for massive financial irregularities. They uncovered over 1,257 million pesos. In probable excess payments, auditors found contractors using poor quality materials that did not meet the engineering standards. They also discovered ghost works, which are invoices submitted and paid for construction tasks that were never actually completed. Beyond the financial drain, the environmental cost to the region is staggering. The government initially campaigned on the promise that they would not cut down a single tree to build the train. They later publicly admitted to logging over 7 million trees to clear the path through the dense jungle ecosystem. They destroyed underground caves and polluted freshwater cenotes with concrete pillars, and just like the refinery, the rushed operations compromised basic safety in 2025. A section of the train derailed in Yucatan because the tracks were not properly secured. Billions of taxpayer dollars disappeared into opaque military budgets to build a train that damages the environment and struggles to operate safely. But the economic damage of this administration extends far beyond the construction sites. It directly affects the daily lives and the wallets of ordinary citizens through the government security strategy. The administration famously adopted a security doctrine called abrazos, no balazos, which translates to hugs, not bullets. They argued that avoiding direct confrontation with the cartels would eventually reduce the violence and bring peace. Instead, critics point out that this non-confrontational approach effectively ceded territorial control of the country to criminal organizations, like the Jalisco New Generation Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel. Without decisive state intervention, the cartels evolved and modernized their business models. They stopped relying solely on drug trafficking and expanded their operations into a shadow economy. They took over mass extortion, which is locally known as cobro de piso. They forced avocado farmers, lime growers, mining companies, and local shop owners to pay an illegal tax just for the right to operate their businesses. If a farmer refused to pay, the cartel burned their crops or harmed their family. This illegal taxation acts as a massive inflation multiplier, driving up the cost of basic food items for every citizen in the country. The cartels also expanded into human smuggling and deeply infiltrated the local agricultural economies, acting as a violent substitute for the state. To mask the failure of civilian police forces, the government transferred immense administrative power directly to the armed forces. The military now controls public security, the national customs agencies, the seaports, the airports, and massive public works budgets. This centralized militarization hides billions of dollars behind national security exemptions. When an airport or a train line is declared a matter of national security, journalists and auditors are legally blocked from seeing the contracts. This severely limits public transparency and removes civilian oversight, without actually curbing the homicide rates or stopping the cartel dominance. The military gains incredible economic power, while the citizens remain caught in the crossfire of extortion and violence, and while the government constantly claims to have eradicated corruption at the top levels of power, investigative journalists keep uncovering networks of elite nepotism. Multiple journalistic investigations revealed a network known as El Clan. This is a group of close friends and associates connected to the sons of former President Lopez Obrador. Investigators found that this network received highly lucrative opaque public contracts from state governments. Companies linked to this network supplied everything from hospital materials during health crises to the heavy ballast stone used to stabilize the tracks for the Tren Maya. These contracts were awarded without public bidding, sparking widespread accusations of high-level nepotism and influence peddling hidden behind a populist brand. The corruption also bleeds down into state leadership and local governance. Ruben Rocha Moya. The Morena governor of Sinaloa faced intense public scrutiny after investigative reports linked his administration to organized crime reporters, found that millionaire state contracts were funneled directly to fuel smuggling networks locally known as Huachicol. The scandal exploded onto the international stage in July 2024 with the arrest of the legendary cartel boss Ismael El Mayo Zambada. Zambada released a public letter claiming he was lured into the capture under the specific premise of attending a political meeting with Governor Rocha Moya. It showcased the deeply entangled relationship between state politics, public money, and the criminal underworld that operates freely within the country. So you have to ask, how does a political movement survive this level of financial mismanagement, unchecked violence, and public corruption? They survive by actively dismantling the institutions that could hold them accountable and by engineering economic dependency among the voters. Over the last few years, the government has actively worked to weaken, defund, or absorb autonomous oversight bodies. They targeted the National Transparency Institute, known as INEI, which was designed to force the government to reveal how they spend public money. They moved to absorb antitrust regulators that prevent corporate monopolies, and they waged a systematic campaign to undermine the judicial branch, seeking to replace independent judges with elected officials, loyal to the party by removing these checks and balances. They concentrated unchecked power entirely within the executive branch. With the watchdogs removed, they secure their voter base through a territorial strategy known as casa por casa. They deploy thousands of party operatives, officially known as the Servidores de la Nación, to interact directly with citizens. Door-to-door political scientists and economic critics point out that this is not structural poverty. Relief designed to build long-term wealth, it is a highly structured form of electoral clientelism. These operatives manage the distribution of direct cash handouts and social programs. They condition the citizens to believe that their financial survival is tied directly to the ruling party, rather than their own labor or state. Institutions, handing out cash does not build new hospitals, it does not improve the public schools, and it does not stop the cartels from extorting the local markets. It simply builds political dependency. Critics frequently compare these territorial control strategies to those utilized by left populist regimes in Venezuela. They align these tactics with the broader ideological influence of Morena's active participation in the Sao Paulo Forum, where political movements share strategies for consolidating state power and neutralizing political opposition. The tragedy of this governance model is that it treats poverty as a useful political tool rather than an economic problem that needs to be permanently solved. They distribute social programs to win elections while simultaneously destroying the transparency, the physical safety, and the environmental resources that the working class desperately needs to actually build. Generational wealth. The promise of a historic transformation simply became a masterclass in centralizing state power, outsourcing the economy to the military and allowing cartels to tax the citizens. The old corrupt system was not dismantled. It was simply rebranded and centralized under a new set of political bosses. If you found this honest look at the hidden economics of Morena's governance helpful, and if it gave you a better understanding of how public money and political power actually operate behind the rhetoric, please do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It helps this channel grow and lets the algorithm know that these thoughtful historical conversations matter. To people like you share this video with a friend who is interested in Latin American politics or global economics so they can see the math behind the headlines. We're going to keep looking into the stories behind global money and how political decisions affect our daily lives. Until next time, remember to take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Stay curious, ask tough questions, and always follow the money when a politician promises to save the world. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today, and I will see you in the next video.